For years, I'd wanted to visit this field in northern Iowa. It was here on February 3rd, 1959, that a single prop plane carrying rock and roll stars Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson crashed in poor wintry weather. All three musicians, plus the 21-year-old pilot, Roger Peterson, lost their lives on that frigid night after playing a concert at the Surf Ballroom in the nearby city of Clear Lake. The 1971 song American Pie by singer-songwriter Don McLean coined the tragedy as The Day the Music Died. But in this video,
you're looking good.
I should probably. It wouldn't hurt to comb my hair, I guess, if I'm going to be on that. Why?
I'll show you how in Clear Lake, Iowa,
there's a lot of history in the room that we're entering.
The music is still very much alive. This story starts at the Surf Ballroom.
This goes way back to the mid-1940s.
The Surf, as it's often called, is a piece of American music history.
We are a National Historic Landmark.
And Lori Leitz is in charge of making sure it stays that way.
I guess I didn't really talk about this. I'm going to turn around and just point out the risers. When Buddy, Ritchie, and the Bopper were here, this is where they just came in with their amps and their guitars. They got up and they started to play.
The Surf was a stop on the 1959 Winter Dance Party Tour, a jam-packed 24-show and 24-day circuit across the Midwest. There were no days off. Logistically speaking, the tour was a disaster, erratically zigzagging from one ballroom to another. For example, Fort Dodge, Iowa, up to Duluth, Minnesota, over to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and then right back to Iowa. The tour bus was so drafty and freezing, Buddy Holly's drummer got severe frostbite. On February 2nd, the musicians rolled into Clear Lake, exhausted.
I'm told that there were about 1,200 people in attendance.
Admission was $1.25. The show went on for some 4 hours.
It was not the desire of the parents to have their kids here. Rock and roll was really kind of taking over, making the teenagers kind of crazy. So what I'm told by a number of people is that the parents got in for free and they lined the dance floor with their arms crossed, watching their kids scream and clamor after these rock and roll stars, and they were not too pleased about it.
Around midnight, Ritchie Valens closed the performance with his hit song, La Bamba. Before departing the Surf, Buddy dialed his wife, Maria Elena, from this payphone. It was the last call he ever made. The Surf has maintained the wooden booth and phone for all of these years.
To tell her that they were off to their next gig. So he used the phone before they departed, and Ritchie called his manager, Bob Keene. So it's special to us. We still keep it here, and it's a highlight on our tour for people to see where those last calls were made.
Buddy, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper made their way to the Mason City Municipal Airport, where Buddy had chartered a private plane similar to this one. The late-night ride to Fargo, North Dakota cost each musician around $380 in today's money. But they felt it was worth it to get a decent night's rest ahead of their next show. The Beechcraft Bonanza plane took off shortly before 1 in the morning. There was light snow, wind around 25 miles per hour, and worsening conditions. The plane quickly lost radio contact. The following morning, the charter company's owner retraced the flight path and found the wreckage 6 miles northwest of the airport. Investigators estimated the plane struck ground at around 170 miles per hour.
I remember that day very well. It was a cold, gray February day.
Yeah.
And I was a sophomore in high school, and the news had gotten through the school. It was starting to permeate through the school that there had been a crash and that Buddy Holly and the others were gone. Nobody could believe it. I was stunned.
Sharon and Jerry O'Neill of Clear Lake
This is my husband's mother,
have been coming to the surf
Count Basie. I remember we saw him.
for most of their lives.
And Duke Ellington, I remember seeing him in the early 1960s when my husband and I were dating. I have his autograph. I found it somewhere the other day on a little slip of paper, and I misplaced it again.
In 1958, Sharon, then a fresh-faced 15-year-old, had the opportunity to see Buddy Holly perform alongside 4 of her cousins.
He had such immense talent. He was one of
The concert, less than 1 year before the fateful plane crash, took place at a family member's ballroom in Dakota, Iowa. That's about a 2-hour drive from Clear Lake.
People have asked me what I remembered about Buddy Holly. He was very good looking, and the show sounded just like his records. It was wonderful.
Following the performance, Sharon and her cousins were tasked with cleaning and doing chores around the ballroom.
And it was a thrill of my life. I got to serve him a cup of coffee, but I didn't strike up a conversation with him.
You were too nervous.
Too nervous. I'm lucky I didn't spill it on him.
All summer long, we sang a song and it strolled on golden sand. To sweetheart and the summer wind. Like
Ballrooms across the United States have gone the way of the drive-in movie theater. Most out of business, abandoned, or torn down.
We hear people gasp all the time as they come in. It never gets old to hear them say, wow, coming in the front door and just having that experience walking in. But it's a lifelong dream for people. It's a bucket list item for people to come and stand on this stage.
The irony of the surf is that the death of a pilot and 3 young musicians at the cusp of their careers have defied all of the odds, keeping music living and breathing within these walls.
We also try to tell the story and honor Buddy, Ritchie, and the Bopper with their own display cases.
The surf is now as much a music venue as it is a history museum. It has enough memorabilia on display to make the Hard Rock Cafe envious. That list includes the wallet Ritchie Valens carried during the ill-fated Winter Dance Tour, a necktie and clothing label that belonged to the Big Bopper, and a handwritten letter Buddy Holly sent his mother and father while on the road. The letter's signed, Love, Buddy.
We've got some cufflinks that Buddy wore, as well as a signed record and a briefcase that was owned and used by the Big Bopper.
The surf also has the camera equipment that Mason City Globe-Gazette photographer Elwin Musser used to document the crash site.
He was the only photographer to be allowed to cover the scene. So we have his camera. It was donated to us by his family after he passed away. He never expected the Pulitzer Prize for his work. He was just doing his job.
And they had their own kind of a style, Chicago style, if you will. And that's what this next tune is.
In the 64 years since the crash, thousands of musicians have made a pilgrimage to the surf. Willie Nelson, Glenn Campbell, the Doobie Brothers, Hootie and the Blowfish, Lynyrd Skynyrd, and Brad Paisley. In the green room, the walls and ceiling are peppered with autographs. ZZ Top, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, and, of course, Don McLean.
This area was once painted green. Thus it's called the Green Room. It was repainted white sometime in the mid-70s, and then people started leaving little notes. You'll see everything from big bands, country, rock, blues. Even the Valens family left their mark back here, as it's a special place for people to be.
The venue, which opened in 1948 after the initial Surf Ballroom burned down, was fashioned after a South Seas beach club. It was designed to mentally transport Iowans subjected each year to brutally cold winters to a place far from their everyday stresses and worries.
It does feel very island-like when you come in here.
The entryway has pineapple wallpaper. The wooden dance floor is meant to resemble sand. The original booths, with reserve signs and fish stenciled onto the sides, are below tropical cabana-style awnings.
So you'll notice like you're on a beach. standing under the midnight navy blue sky of the dome. The beach murals in the back depict waves and, crashing waves over the beach, the palm trees, that type of thing. If you haven't been in the bathroom, you have to see the bathrooms.
I did go in there. Perhaps no two people have been more instrumental to the surf's survival than Dean and Joanne Snyder. In 1994, the couple saved the building from the wrecking ball.
The roof was leaking and it just seemed like it was the end. And so there were chains put on the doors, and the ballroom was essentially put up for sale. And as I understand it, there was actually somebody interested in demolishing the ballroom and going to make it into a grocery store. And the Snyders stepped up and undertook a massive historic renovation opportunity. Truly a labor of love.
Using original floor plans and historic photos, Dean and Joanne, plus an army of volunteers, painstakingly restored the property. Dean passed away in 2018. Joanne died 1 year later. They were married for 63 years.
She liked to dance, so he bought her the surf.
We thought that was a cute story.
One night, Dean went out with a double-wide broom, and he was sweeping the floor at intermission. If you didn't know who the man was, you would have thought he was the janitor, but he was sweeping the floor at intermission.
And he owned the place. That's the kind of guy he was.
But that's typical Iowa, too.
No visit to the surf is complete without a trip to the crash site, a short 10-minute drive north. You can park in this gravel lot named for Don McLean and then walk a quarter mile along this grassy path to the memorial. When I visited in June of 2023, people had left flowers, candles, beer cans, and a handful of glasses, a nod to Buddy Holly's iconic black-rimmed frames. The surf is open year-round and free to tour.
Well, this is the ticket box.
Though a $5 donation per person is suggested.
And I'll turn it back to my little better half.
Well, thank you.
Chatting with Sharon and Jerry O'Neill, I could feel the joy that the surf exudes. If not transporting them to the South Seas, certainly to their youth.
You were how old at the time?
Well, I told you it was 1958.
Okay, that's pretty good. Pretty good.
Actually, I was 15, so I am 80 now. And I still have happy memories
Sweet 15.
of a much happier time and a simpler time and a time when music was fun. Some of the lyrics were silly, but most of the music we could hum, we could hear it in our head, we could sing it.
Could remember it.
We could remember it, have fun with it.
It's pouring clover time.
Fortunately or unfortunately, the historic date of February 2nd, 1959 really keeps us on the map as a place where it was a pivotal point in music history.
From the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa.
And we're here to tell that story.
Yeah, oh, okay. Oh, the fun's just started. Yeah, all right. Come again.
I'm Kevin, across America.
So wonderful. Gershwin tune, 3 swings. We'll be back in just a little bit with another rumba. We had a request to do another Latin tune. So we'll do a 3-tune set next, and the first one will be a rumba. Be back shortly.